Guardians, Into the Light is here, and with it comes a new game mode, Onslaught, where you'll fight wave after wave of enemies, truly testing your capabilities as a Guardian. Today, we're covering the top 4 Warlock builds that absolutely dominate Legend Onslaught. Onslaught summons wave after wave of enemies, doing its best to overwhelm you and your team with the sheer amount of manpower coming your way. With these builds, we'll focus on clearing out as many as possible, as quick as possible, while at the same time, we focus on keeping us and our team alive. These builds are tailored to excel in environments with a ton of enemies, while melting any bosses that stand in your way of getting these shiny new weapons. So, rally your fellow Guardians, prepare your arsenal, and join us as we explore the top 4 Warlock builds designed to dominate PvE content in Destiny 2. Remember to leave a like if you find this video helpful, and if you like seeing build videos and other Destiny 2 helpful content, consider hitting that subscribe button. With that being said, let's jump right on into it. And the first build on our list is what I like to call the peak poison build. So what makes this build stand out? Well, Strand Warlock is just so much fun to use. With this build, we take advantage of weapons of sorrow, like Thorn, Osteo, and Necrochasm, to spread poison to all enemies. This poison spread comes from our choice of exotic, Necrotic Grips, where melees deal poison damage, but weapons of sorrow also spread poison damage over a small area. This leads to poison spreading all over, and damaging and killing targets. This is already very powerful, but we amp it up even further with Mind Spun Invocation. By pressing and holding your grenade button, you consume your grenade, giving you a benefit, and when the Shackle Grenade is consumed, Final Blows will suspend targets. Since your poison will already be wiping out mass amounts of targets, you will be inherently suspending all targets as well. This really helps keep the poison going, as well as slow down enemies, making it harder for them to get to your ADU. To make it even stronger, we want to save at least one melee for each wave of enemies. With Arcane Needle, we can unravel targets. So now you have your poison from your weapons and melee, unravel from your melee, and you also get suspend by consuming your grenade. You thought I was done, but I'm not. Bring a weapon like Indebted Kindness that can roll with Volt Shot and add Jolt into the mix. Now you have 3 separate AoE damages wiping out targets, and in the process, you'll be suspending everything, mass damage and crowd control. So what's the flow for this build? Well, you start by consuming your grenade to get the suspending started. Then use a melee to start spreading the poison and unravel. From there, continuously kill with your weapons of sorrow. We bring in aspects like Thread of Mind and Wisdom so that we gain back more class ability energy and create orbs when we defeat those suspended targets. The amount of consistent damage from poisoning feeds directly into Thread of Generation, allowing you to get your grenade back even quicker and start the cycle all over again. And don't forget to use that weapon with Volt Shot whenever you get a chance, so you can spread that jolt as well. So how can we improve the build? Well, for stats, I like to shoot for 100 resilience and discipline. Then I shoot for around 70 in recovery, so that we can take a font mod and get that triple 100s. Any leftover stats can go into strength, since your melee can spread that unravel, so it is pretty strong. There are a few weapons that really help this build become even stronger. As we mentioned, weapons of sorrow are your #1 option. So weapons like Thorn, Osteo, and Necrochasm are my top picks. Thorn is my #1 pick since there are unstoppable champions and hand cannons right now are unstoppable. I also like to bring Indebted Kindness as a heavy hitting sidearm, but that also allows us to then take care of barrier champs. And finally, I like to bring a rocket, especially one with bipod, so that we can take care of those pesky overload champs and wipe out tougher targets like Briggs. This build really is the best of both worlds. In Onslaught, you want massive ad clearing potential and good crowd control to slow down enemies. And this build does both. It's phenomenal. For our second build, we have a Stasis build using the Osmiomancy gloves called my Freezing Turrets build. As we mentioned before, ad clearing potential and crowd control are the 2 best things for Onslaught. Shatter damage will lead to wiping out mass amounts of enemies, while our turrets will continuously freeze everything in sight. We bring the aspect Bleak Watcher so that when we press and hold our grenade button, we convert it into a turret. That turret will shoot nearby targets, eventually freezing them. And this becomes super strong when paired with Osmiomancy gloves. That way we can take a Cold Snap grenade and get 2 charges for our grenade. With our mods, fragments, and exotic, we can drastically improve our grenade recharge rate, leading to more turrets that will be freezing absolutely everything. We bring Ice Flare bolts to continue the freezing. By shattering a target, a Seeker is sent out to freeze another target. Since we will be freezing everything, we bring the fragments Whisper of Refraction and Chains, so that we take less damage while we're near frozen targets or crystals. And we get more class ability from killing frozen or slowed targets. That way we can increase our survivability overall, with more damage resistance and more healing rifts. So what's the flow for this build? Well, we want to throw our first grenade as a turret near where a wave of enemies are spawning. Then we throw a normal cold snap grenade to proc the extra ability energy from Osmiomancy gloves. Continue to throw your turrets whenever you get a chance, while occasionally throwing a normal grenade for the extra freezing and ability energy. This season, we have 2 artifact perks that increase the damage from crystals and spawn more crystals when killing a frozen enemy. So after defeating a frozen enemy, be sure to shatter those crystals that spawn so you can proc Whisper of Shards to increase your grenade ability regeneration by a whopping 500%, leading back to even more turrets. And to improve this build for stats, I like to shoot for 100 in resilience, recovery, and discipline for maximum survivability and turrets. When it comes to weapons, Aegir Scepter is absolutely fantastic for this build. Since you can get Tormentors in Onslaught, if you have your super for them, you can activate Aegir Scepter's Empowering mode, and this absolutely shreds Tormentors. Just make sure you're hitting that crit spot. If you don't have Aegir Scepter, another Stasis primary with Headstone is ideal. I then like to bring a rocket for Overload champs and a sidearm for Barrier champs. Your turrets can technically stun both Unstoppable and Overload champs, but I still like to bring the extra Overload because rockets are still really good right now. The amount of shatter damage that we can cause will absolutely decimate waves of enemies, and our turrets will help keep the bigger targets in place so they can't reach your ADU and you can come home with that victory. When looking at LFG groups for Legend Onslaught, everyone wants a Well of Radiance Warlock. So this next build will help fill that gap, allowing you to get on nearly any team. With this build, we're shooting to get our well back as quick as possible for survivability, extra damage, and orbs to help our team get back their super and generate more scrap. We are bringing Phoenix Protocol to help out. We can now get back to 50% of our super by getting kills and assists while we're in our well. Because we want to get our well back as quick as possible, we take mods like Harmonic Siphon, Ashes to Assets, Firepower, and Font of Wisdom to generate more orbs, more super energy on grenade kills, and while we have armor charge, increase recharge rate for our well. Since our grenades get back so much super energy, we bring a solar grenade paired with Touch of Flame to deal massive damage in a large area. We then bring the fragment Ember of Benevolence to massively increase our ability regeneration rate. This is paired perfectly with Phoenix Dive and Ember of Singeing. Now we can dive on a teammate to proc the increased regeneration for all of our abilities, and we can kill a scorched target to increase our class ability regeneration even further. You can also use a weapon with heal clip or damage from empowered melee to proc Ember of Benevolence. This makes it super easy to spam everything from grenades to Phoenix Dives, killing everything, healing you and your team, and getting back your super at insane rates. So what's the flow for this build? Well, the flow goes like this. Consume your grenade to proc heat rises, and if you can, Phoenix Dive on a teammate and potentially an enemy, so that you can proc both Ember of Benevolence as well as Restoration times 2. Quickly get a solar kill to extend that restoration. Powered melees will keep up your ability recharge, so use them often and get kills in the air to get back your melee even quicker. When you have your super available, pop it to create extra orbs. This will be super easy to get back, so use your well very often. And how do we improve this build? Well, for stats, I like to shoot for 100 resilience. Then I go for roughly 60 intellect and discipline, and any leftover stats can go into recovery. If you can get higher discipline, go for it. I don't have the best armor on my Warlock, so I wasn't able to get past 60 in discipline without absolutely wiping out some of my other important stats. But you want to keep your intellect fairly high, while at the same time keeping your discipline high, because they will feed into each other. Solar weapons excel with this build because they extend our restoration and radiant. Weapons with heal clip add another way to proc Ember of Benevolence. Or you can take Sunshot, since it not only stuns unstoppable champions, but it's also very good for clearing out ads. I like to take a rocket launcher, like Galley or a legendary rocket, to deal with overload champions and clear out tougher targets. In my primary slot, I like to bring a crowd control weapon, like a disorienting grenade launcher. That way I can have excellent damage plus the additional crowd control. Supers help feed more scrap, and more importantly, more supers and abilities for your team, making it easy to wipe out waves of enemies. Plus, you'll be able to basically get on any team that's out there. And for our fourth and final build, we have a Void build that uses Briar Binds that I like to call our Soulbound build. Void classes tend to be some of the best classes for supporting your team, and this build does not disappoint. We have consistent access to Weakening and Devour to gain more health, deal more damage, and throw more grenades. We bring Briar Binds so that our Void Souls will not only last longer, but also deal more damage, and even allow you to pick them up to redeploy them into new areas. The amount of weakening you cause helps you and your team shred through all the waves of enemies, even the tougher ones. So what's the flow for this build? Well, this build is pretty simple. Use your Rift to create a Void Soul, then start shooting and throwing your grenades as much as possible. We use Feed the Void to gain Devour and increase its benefit from getting any Void ability kills. With our Void Soul dealing increased damage and weakening targets, we can easily throw more and more grenades, which will also cause Void explosions. And because our Void Soul weakens absolutely everything, this allows us to take advantage of Echo of Harvest and instability, so that we can create orbs by killing weakened targets. And we gain volatile rounds when we kill with our grenade. Both of these should continuously proc, since we'll be weakening nearly every target and throwing grenades like crazy. We bring the fragment Echo of Obscurity so that we can use a finisher to go invisible if we ever are in trouble. And like I mentioned, we also bring Echo of Expulsion so that any Void ability kills cause explosions, which helps take out even more targets. So how do I improve this build? Well, for stats, I like to shoot for 100 Discipline and Resilience. I then go for about 50 in Recovery. Graviton Lance is amazing. It already does a ton of damage, but with its ability to create basically infinite explosions, it makes it perfect for a game mode like Onslaught. I absolutely love Buried Bloodline for this. Not only does it stun barrier champions, but you also weaken enemies that are far away, like bosses, tormentors, or brigs. If you do run out of ammo for your Buried Bloodline, simply switch to Graviton Lance or another Void primary until you get to the next rally banner. Since we have increased Void weapon damage, we want a Void heavy. Regnant is good for DPS phases and wiping out all the mini bosses. If you already have it, Edge Transit is also fantastic with a few rolls. Void machine guns are fantastic for ad clearing and dealing decent damage at range. Or you can bring a Void rocket launcher for stunning overload champions and wiping out waves of enemies. I usually like to take a sniper in the primary slot to take care of those pesky tormentors and deal damage at range. Our Void Souls weaken everything. We constantly get our grenade back, which creates explosions and gives us volatile rounds. We can use our Nova Bomb on bosses or to help wipe out tougher targets. This build is absolutely perfect for Onslaught. And there you have it, Guardians. I've put links in the description to these builds in case you want to see an even more in-depth breakdown of how they work. Remember, mastering these builds is only the beginning. Experiment with different combinations, tweak your loadouts to suit your playstyle, and never stop honing your skills. If you found this video helpful or just enjoyed seeing a new perspective, feel free to like the video and comment down below what you might change or how you'd improve these builds. What build do you think is best for the new Onslaught mode? Keep an eye out for future videos as we continue to explore the ever-evolving world of Destiny 2. Until then, may the threads of fate be ever in your favor. This is Lucky Mech signing off. See you on the next adventure, Guardians.